prehistoric king has been discovered. It didn't walk with dinosaurs. It ate them. Now, join the National Geographic Channel on an epic adventure. Resurrecting 10 tons of terror and teeth. Supercroc.
In these desolate sands, a dragon has been sighted.
It's just enormous.
A monstrous reptile from the ancient past.
That is just amazing.
Perhaps the largest crocodile ever to walk the earth. Now paleontologist Paul Sereno begins a quest to understand this creature.
Some muzzle.
To capture the essence of the beast, simply assembling the bones will not be enough. Paul must get his hands on the creature's living relatives in order to rebuild it. Claws, teeth, flesh and all. To do so, he will team up with modern crocodile specialist Brady Barr. Their mission will take them around the world and bring them into close contact with some of the world's most fearsome crocodiles. From the huge crocs of Costa Rica to India's rare gharial. On their journey, they will draw on the latest surprising research into today's crocodiles.
2,145 pounds.
Will these awesome creatures give up the clues Paul and Brady need to understand the prehistoric beast? To solve the riddle of its bones? To discover just how huge it was? To rebuild the Supercroc? This is a land of dead things. The domain of bone hunters, paleontologists. They have found the skull of an ancient and monstrous reptile. News of the discovery has spread beyond the desert. It has lured here a man more accustomed to the watery world of today's crocodiles. National Geographic field specialist, Dr. Brady Barr. Brady has traveled many thousands of miles to the country of Niger. To a land of camels and Tuareg nomads. Brady journeys beyond the mud-built ancient capital, Agadez, to a remote region of the Sahara called Gardafawa. He has come to see this thing that has emerged from the sand.
That's it. All right, my friend, we made it.
2 days' drive into the desert, Brady finally arrives at his destination.
There he is. That's the man right there.
The field camp of National Geographic Explorer in Residence, Dr. Paul Sereno.
I have pursued crocodiles all over the planet in, lots of different ecosystems, but never dreamed I would be in the desert looking for a crocodile.
I can imagine. I mean, for us, this is the ideal place to find crocodiles. We have just found a skull that really is about the biggest I've ever seen.
Thrusting up through the sand is the skull of a gigantic beast, a tantalizing clue to a lost world. It has been 11 years since Paul Sereno first explored this harsh world.
Bone all over the place here. Look at this.
On 4 previous expeditions, he unearthed clues to Africa's prehistoric past.
Brontosaurus, we've got pterosaur, we've got a sauropod and a theropod.
But working in the Sahara has always been a challenge. It is remote, brutally hot, And in the early years, civil war made it perilous. Despite the risks, the rewards have been spectacular.
Wow, that's a big-ass claw.
Through his dogged persistence and the labor of a hand-picked team, Paul has discovered a menagerie of new dinosaur species. Among them, the ponderous Jubaria, fierce Afrovenator, the fleet-footed Deltadromeus, and the ferocious Suchomimus. Paul has revolutionized our understanding of dinosaur life in Africa. And now he has made another amazing find. But this is not the jaw of a dinosaur. These are the remains of an enormous crocodile.
That's what I came to see right there. That's Sarcosuchus?
This is Sarcosuchus, the giant crocodile of the time period here. And we're looking at one huge skull.
Man,
those scoots,
giant.
It's an absolute monster.
Sarcosuchus imperator, the flesh crocodile emperor.
Unbelievable. Man, it's mammoth.
Yeah.
This is what I came to see right here. That is Sarcosuchus.
This is monstrous.
Man.
Lying down next to it gives you some idea of the size. I'm 5 feet 11 inches, 5 feet 10.5 inches.
That skull is as big as you.
The skull is just a little bit bigger than me, so it's close to 6 feet long.
Oh my gosh. That is a lot bigger than any crocodiles on the planet today. It's one thing to open a book and, you know, read about the history of crocodilians or see a picture of, you know, primitive crocodiles or go to a museum and see a specimen. But it's a completely different thing to come out here into the middle of the desert and see the thing where it laid down and died 100 million years ago. It just doesn't get any better than that.
Pieces of the giant were first spotted out here decades ago. Now Paul's team has found many of the animal's bones and a remarkably complete skull. He suspects that these are the remnants of the biggest crocodile that ever walked the earth.
Sarcosuchus is fascinating because it pushes the limits of crocodiles. You know, what could a crocodile become in the course of evolution?
In the classical tree, where people look at Protosuchia, Mesosuchia, Eusuchia.
Paul aims to use the skull to calculate the size of this immense beast. And to do that, he'll have to carve this massive hunk out of the rocky desert. As the team embarks on this daunting task, Paul and Brady prospect throughout the area, seeking as many other bones as possible from the giant.
Nothing here.
That's an osteoderm.
Yeah, wow.
The osteoderms line the crocodile's skin, covering the back like armor-plated roof tiles.
What's called an osteoderm. That's about as large a skewed as I've ever seen on a present-day crocodile, maybe a...
To understand Sarcosuchus, Paul wants to conjure up the animal's world as it was 110 million years ago.
Now that's just a few grains of sand, and if you're wondering how
The
much
desert
sand
today
is there,
offers
and,
clues to the
you might
past,
take a little piece of the
but
rock.
only if you're willing to eat them.
You will be able to tell how much sand is in that rock.
By chewing on the rock and gauging its grittiness, Paul can get a sense of the terrain here all those millennia ago.
And we're in the middle, quite frankly, we're in the middle of a river system with crocodiles and dinosaurs living along the side that are getting dragged down the river. And these rivers were meandering rivers. They were winding rivers, which tells us that the area was pretty flat. And it had muddy sections and it had sandy sections and a rich area of trees, crocodiles. And that's what the story that's coming out of these beds is. That's the kind of environment that existed here 110 million years ago.
It was a world of giants. And among the mighty dinosaurs, there lurked a crocodile that may have been their equal. But how did they interact? Was the Supercroc prey or predator? Remarkably, today's crocodiles offer clues to help Paul understand their prehistoric relative. In the million centuries since the time of Sarcosuchus, Niger has gone from being a wetland to a desert. Yet somehow, crocodilians are still with us. For a paleontologist, this offers a dream opportunity.
You know, I think that a lot of times we're dealing with dinosaurs. We don't know really what they look like in life and some aspects of their behavior. We have to look at living animals, birds, reptiles, whatever, to imagine how they laid their eggs and lived. When we're dealing with a giant crocodile, Sarcosuchus, the natural thing is to go to living crocodiles. I mean, that is where you'd go to understand the lifestyle of this animal, to get as close as you could.
But getting close to a large wild crocodile is no easy task. And that's where Brady comes in. Brady is one of a select group of field scientists with actual hands-on experience capturing wild crocodiles.
Oh, look at that foot.
I've always been fascinated by alligators, even as a small child. But I grew up in the cornfields of southern Indiana. There weren't many alligators there. Went to graduate school in South Florida, where there were a lot of alligators, and I saw these large carnivores living in close contact with humans.
Brady went on to study how this close contact affected the alligator's food supply. By now, he has handled 10 different species of crocodilian on 4 continents.
Keep going! Oh, look, he's got a small fish in his mouth.
If any scientist can get Paul the close encounter with crocodiles that he needs to understand the Supercroc, Brady can. But first, Brady will get a crash course in the origins of the animals that so fascinate him. And a baptism by fire in the rigors of paleontology.
A little toasty here, huh?
It's just brutal. I mean, I'm having trouble breathing, it's so hot.
What is the temperature, hon?
It's let's see, it's about 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
120.
Close to 50 Celsius.
I have never been anywhere where it is this hot. I just barely talk, it's so hot.
Well, this is the easy part because we've been just working in 120-degree heat with these brushes. But now we're down to the hard stuff.
I mean, you have to go through this hard stone?
By hand.
You bet.
How?
Yeah.
Just chisel?
And pickaxe.
Gee.
Really a sculptor's technique.
The monster seems reluctant to leave its lair, the sandstone that has been its home for more than 100 million years. They have recovered numerous scutes and other bones from Sarcosuchus, but the huge skull is still entombed in the desert.
Trying to kill it. God, they're nasty. What is that? Look at that teeth. Look at those teeth.
By noon, the heat is unbearable. Even Dino, the camp dog, seeks out some shade. After days of hacking at the rock, Paul's team has nearly carved the skull out of the desert. In preparation for shipping, they give the fossil a protective jacket of burlap and plaster. They will flip the skull over. If they're not careful, they risk cracking the precious bone.
Because if it does break and leave something, it can be a disaster. You can destroy a specimen, and it has happened many times in the history of paleontology where you think you've got it, and then at the last minute, it's gone. You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay, the moment of truth. He's over! Woo! It's okay.
Nice.
Good job. That was great.
We'll keep this plane right here then.
I just don't see how you work in that heat, day in and day out. I will take my swamps, rivers, lakes, streams, billabongs, bogs, any day of the week. Man, this desert heat is brutal.
Personally, I prefer 125 degrees to mosquitoes.
Early next morning, Paul and Brady leave camp and head back to the dig. The mighty skull is finally ready for transport.
Okay, 1, 2, whoa, okay.
Paul estimates that the skull and the rock that encases it weigh more than 800 pounds. And there are no forklifts out here.
Got it. Oh, yeah.
The skull is headed on a long journey, some 8,000 miles to Paul's lab in Chicago. Paul and Brady begin a journey of their own, one they hope will culminate in a face-to-face meeting with the Supercroc. To create an accurate, full-scale model of the beast, bones, flesh and all, Paul has to explore a range of modern crocodilians. And he and Brady will draw on the latest crocodilian research from around the world. How is it that crocodiles have persisted since the time of Sarcosuchus? Their earliest ancestors, curious animals that looked only faintly crocodilian, first arose around 230 million years ago in the Triassic period. More modern-looking crocodiles emerged around 150 million years ago in the Jurassic. As the animals around them have evolved beyond all recognition, the crocodiles have just kept eating their way through them. These creatures boast a remarkable collection of survival tools. Among them, their exceptional hunting ability. The crocodile may be the perfect predator. It can lie concealed for hours at a time. Special receptors lining the jaw sense the tiniest movement of its prey. Perhaps its most unique survival tool is an exquisitely adapted heart. A special valve allows the crocodile to actively change the routing of blood through its body. We know of no other animal that can do this. By directing oxygenated blood to the brain, the crocodile can remain submerged and concealed for hours. The crocodile can go without food for a year or more. But when it decides to eat, it is virtually unstoppable. Another survival tool is an advanced system of communication. They can intimidate their rivals with subsonic pulses. in their mating rituals, alligators use low-frequency growls to make the water on their backs dance. They are highly vocal animals. From the bellowing of adult gators to the mewling of young crocs. In many species, these small noises act as an alarm system when the young are endangered. The involvement of the mother in the rearing of her young is almost unique among reptiles. The female American alligator is among the most caring of crocodilian parents. She helps her hatchlings break free from their eggs and cradles them in her bone-crushing jaws. Perhaps this is a partial answer to the riddle of how the crocodilians have survived since the time of Supercroc. Could it be that the mother Sarcosuchus also cared for her young? Like today's alligator, the huge mother might well have plucked up her newborns. Mini monsters, perhaps 3 times the size of today's little gators. Nestle them in her fearsome jaws. Carry them from the nest and deliver them to the primordial river. More than 8,000 miles and 110 million years later, the bones finally make it to Paul's lab at the University of Chicago. This is where his detective work really begins.
Yeah, this is great.
Part of the secret to this beast's existence is trapped in its bones. To unlock that secret, Paul aims to reconstruct the skeleton. He and his team will spend months cleaning the fossils, making copies of hundreds of bones, and assemble the vast skeleton.
Fieldwork is sometimes the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, physically and mentally. Now comes the time when you can unwrap those presents back in the lab, when you can take a shower, come in the morning, clean, and take a look at something that you remember, something that you were very excited about so many months ago in the middle of a desert. I'm really looking forward to see this animal slowly come into view.
Paul's objective goes beyond the science. To capture the essence of Sarcosuchus, he must build a flesh-on model.
To reconstruct something that nobody has seen before, you have a big challenge ahead. You've got to capture something that expresses what that animal was about. You know, when you think about a human, what one sculpting out of all the myriad numbers that have been done of a human would you choose if you could only choose one and had to express something that is uniquely human? Well, I think of Rodin's Thinker. A human poised in thought. And when it comes time to put Sarcosuchus together, we've got to come up with something like that. One pose that's going to capture something about the essence of this animal. Its power, its agility, what it's doing with its life at a critical moment.
Many of those critical moments likely involved hunting and killing. The skull is already giving Paul a picture of the ancient croc's formidable eating habits.
Wow, that's quite a set of chompers it's got on the front. That is some muzzle. We'll put it over here.
He believes that its elongated jaws suggest it would have eaten fish. But these prehistoric fish were no trout. Its likely prey were 5-foot-long, bony beasts like lungfish and coelacanths. As Sarcosuchus grew to full size, its jaws became more massive, more robust, suggesting that something even bigger was on the menu. Could Supercroc have eaten dinosaurs? Most reptiles, even some meat-eating dinosaurs, have relatively delicate skulls, full of air spaces and fragile bones. But the crocodile's skull is fused into an almost solid hunk. It has evolved to silence large and powerful prey. $110 million years ago, the prey was particularly large and powerful. What kind of bite would it take to bring down a dinosaur? To rip through its leathery hide, to crush its huge bones? A big one. The expert on big bites is biologist Greg Erickson, who studies the biomechanics of feeding at Florida State University.
So this is the main breeding lake here.
He is working with Kent Fleet, an advisor to the St. Augustine alligator farm in Florida.
Small adult females.
They've been asked by National Geographic to try and calculate the bite force of Sarcosuchus. Was it powerful enough to take down a dinosaur? Greg has a custom-made bite bar that will gauge the force of a gator's bite. To estimate the bite force of Supercroc, he will scale this up, way up.
You can imagine there must have just been incredible encounters between, you know, these 35-foot behemoths, and also they must have been taking out very large prey items. I mean, these animals lived at a time when there were all kinds of giant animals. There were dinosaurs and other creatures of the sea that were just enormous, and it's really neat to sort of speculate what that must have been like. What's the offset? 06. 06, we're ready. Okay, here we go. Hang on, people.
Finally, she's ready, and Greg carefully inserts the bite bar between her jaws. But she hasn't finished rolling, and now she has Greg's bite bar wedged between her teeth.
Let her down a little bit. Okay.
This animal just generated a snapping bite of 860 pounds, which is an enormous amount of force, and you know, the pressures were extremely high on the tips of those teeth. So if this animal had, say, tried to take out a large prey item, say a deer or something like that, it certainly could have punctured the hide, and obviously it's exerting that kind of force right now. We can't even get our bite bar back out.
To force the jaws open is equivalent to lifting 860 pounds. You'd need a car jack to pry the bar out.
This is a common behavior in them. It's a defensive thing. If you've bitten down on a potential predator or a rival and you hold on to them, they're obviously not going to be able to turn and get a hold of you. An overpowering bite obviously implies some dominance.
20 minutes later, they finally get the bar back.
We need people.